Professor Richard Searle at MIT in 2025, and then actually again, well, originally in 2024, I took this as an online course. It's free. Um, MITx, perhaps part of EDX, um, was granted to me. You can pay like $90 for a certificate. Um, I didn't take the whole course at the time. It's called Mind and Machine, so with CGI and whatnot, I thought it'd be good to understand um, just philosophy without an agenda. Um, this is a paper I found. I never read this. He has his own paper, which I'll post, published on like JSTOR. Um, so it's a normal course with documentation, homework. There is one kind of test, basically a logic and argumentation test. Um, about 7 or 8 questions. You know, I did well on it, so that's why I retook it. It's actually called the Chinese Room. It's about light and mechanical engineering, group tragedy, group thinking, things like that. So I'm gonna try to read this. I haven't read this. It's 9 pages. We'll probably get to through three. An argument in logic is not a quarrel or dispute. Instead, it is a list of sentences. So I would say, yeah, this is based off of Voltaire and Leibniz. The last sentence is the conclusion, and the other sentences are the premises. That's his argument. The premises sometimes are separated from any conclusion by a line. Oops. 1. No professors are ignorant. All ignorant people are vain. No professors are vain. And all lions are fierce. Some lions do not drink coffee. Therefore, some creatures that drink coffee are not fierce. They are both arguments. These two are taken from Lewis Carroll, who was a mathematician, John Keynes, who wrote Alice in Wonderland. The readings will not usually contain arguments in the nice form. Rather, you will have to extract premises and conclusions from much more complex and lengthy passages of time or text. In doing this, it is helpful to look out for keywords. Some common premise indicators are because, since, given, that, for, which are prepositions. Because is das in German, since is bis, um, vor, for, um, and those are called time prepositions, really. Other prepositions are um, on, uh, aside, beside, on top of, underneath. Those are normal prepositions. These words usually come right before a premise. Here are some examples of the use. Mr. Toad shall be in prison because he stole a motor car. Given that keeping pet dragons is a common practice, we might as well make it legal. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, preposition or propositions. Some common conclusion indicators are thus, therefore, hence, it follows that, so consequently. Um, Basically, consequentialist indicators. These words come right before the conclusion. I'm not gonna go through that. It is also, don't use them lightly. However, make sure they are really flagging either a premise or a conclusion of your argument as appropriate. A reader, you would notice like in fiction, you don't use therefore that much. Um, but because is very interesting. A reader is entitled to think that sentence is preceded by because are premises, though it's also time based, and that sentence is preceded by therefore uh, are also time based. A conclusion is entailed by or a logical consequence of logical fallacies. Some premises indicate it is absolutely impossible for all the premises to be true or the conclusion false. Like in testing, by the time you get to E, you would have a better chance of knowing is E is true. However, in a positive regression, that might not be true if the question gets harder. Put another way, the conclusion is entailed by the premise just in case. Necessarily, if the premises are all true, the conclusion is true. An argument is valid just in case its conclusion is entailed by its premises. An argument that is not valid is invalid. So, this seems like circular reasoning, but it's the opposite of circular reasoning. An argument that is not valid is invalid. That is using invalid in a sentence as a definition. That is logical. Note that there are perfectly good arguments. Past wizards' congresses have always contained many adulterers. This would be like binomial distribution. The current wizards' congress contains some adulterers. We have examined a large sample of rats and found that they enjoy messing around in boats. So is 13 related to 14? And it's no. Most rats enjoy messing around in boats. Some arguments are called inductively strong. Induction is something I talk about. Deductive logic is the formal mathematical theory. In AdOps, you would have one platform, 13, another platform, 14, AOL and Yahoo. And in deduction, you would say, okay, this one is better. I can deduce this one uses apostrophes. This one uses random sampling. Continuing to use deduction, contain. Well, now I have to induce something. That's kind of create a prediction. Does this one have in common random sampling? And it would be because what's an adulterer and things like that. So then I have to make an inductive argument in order to predict, what similarities or differences in terms of shopping for widgets or products or comparative advantage or stronger performance, efficiencies, optimization, blah, blah, blah. Here, this platform shows a KPI, this one doesn't, blah, blah, blah. Although invalidity is not necessarily a sign of failure, again, such as leprosy, often arguments in philosophy are good arguments only if they are valid. That's true. One of the things about philosophy is you can read 300 pages about an invalid argument. There are many exceptions to this, but so here are some exercises. To be honest, I thought the earlier one was from someone else. So determine for each of the two arguments and for each of the following arguments whether it is valid or invalid. So I only want to do this if there's answers, There's no answers. Why is he making us do this, Mr. Toad's troubles were caused by either conspiracy or by his own animal urges. So, I'm going to go with they were caused by his own animal urges. That seems to be the answer there. Either Mr. Fox can outwit Vogus or pigs will fly. Right, because pigs can't fly. All unicorns enjoy eating grass. Some male unicorns enjoy eating grass. So I would throw this question out. Unforgivable curses are morally wrong. True. Well, not really, right? If they're evil, then no. Unforgivable courses are not that's true. Blah blah blah. Those are tough to make. Remember that. The most common reason for this kind of corrigible invalidity is missing premises. Sometimes a writer does not state all of her premises. Supply the missing premises. If your mistreatment of housewives is revealed, you'll lose your reputation as a witch of integrity. So let's look at one. Not all the eggs in the basket are brown. So stop there. So other eggs are white or black. That's an assumption. So that's wrong, right? We have to admit that. Not all the eggs in the basket are brown. Some of the eggs in the basket are not brown. That's what it says. Suppose that there are no eggs in the basket. That's an immoral argument. Now we stop reading. A deductive argument is sound. This will be on the test. A deductive argument is sound just in case it is valid and all its premises are true. A deductive argument is sound just in case it is valid and all its premises are true. That's true. An argument that is not sound is unsound. That's redundancy error on my part. Now, redundancy error is freaking awesome. I don't know what it is. If he's going to be silly, I'm going to fight with fire. Now we can say what is wrong with argument 19. Can something be unsound? Can you reciprocate sound? The conclusion of a sound argument is true. The conclusion of a sound argument is musical. If you disagree with the conclusion of an argument, you're better off stating your own argument than that you disagree. Therefore, if the conclusion is false, the argument must be unsound. This means either the man must lie or he must continue to tell the truth. In either way, he's also not suffering. If it is mistaken, there are other words you can use. Soundness is thus very important in evaluating both arguments from the readings and your own arguments. Do thoughts have sound? That's no. And the premises which he or she advances, do thoughts now have sound? That could be yeah. That could be foot. If it is not sound, it may be yet inductively strong with true premises. If it is neither, it may be committed to flames. So either Moles write poetry or Badgers write poetry. So when do you stop, right? This is kind of like the LSAT. It is not the case that moles write poetry, So if you have to stop, the test can't be that long. It is not the case that moles write poetry. Badgers write poetry. And then second, replacing the sentences moles write poetry and badgers write poetry with schematic letters P and Q, either P or Q. It is not the case that P, then what? Q. The general form of modus ponens argument is given in 22. Two examples follow. If P, then Q, P over Q. So what is P over Q? It's tough. We should leave them alone. Categorical syllogism. Two general types of categorical syllogism. We can look up syllogism. An instance or a form of reasoning in which a conclusion is drawn, whether validly or not, from two given or assumed propositions. So one way to think about this, I can show you. is probability. And that's what this is filed under, but it's really logic regression or logic something. We won't get held up on what it's called. But two easy terms are union and intersection in math, right? So A U B or a it's an upside down U, so we'll just put O B. So O is intersection. So the A union B is something like cat, hat, bat. These are, my stuff, her stuff, Saturday, hat, and hat. So what's the union? Right, it's hat. Right, they both have hat. Now intersection's difficult. This is in quantic. So actually, my bad. My bad. Let's walk that back. The union is everything, right? So the union is all of this stuff, right? So then the redundancy error would be what? It would be saying hat twice. The intersection is just hat. So we'll move on. So sometimes words like syllogism are just like, why, all F's are G's. Well, can that be true? No. Arguments can have various flaws. So now we're understanding part of this is not just understanding our arguments, but exposing the falsehood of other arguments, invalidity, false premises, dialectical ineffectiveness in conversation. Um, there is a dragon in the pen. The pen is in Harry's pocket. So by the transitive property of equality, A equals B equals C, then A equals C, the dragon must be in Harry's pocket. There it is. And that concludes